Hello pals and gals from YouTube land. This is Mr. Rain from Rain Country Homestead, and my wife bought this Wringer. It's a 1924 horseshoe brand universal Wringer. Kind of interesting. If you look really close, you can see that this thing was warranted for 3 years after purchasing. The lettering is very much intact, and so what I wanted to do is just protect it with some Danish oil. I believe back in the day they used to preserve these types of builds with Danish oil, linseed oil, different types of oil. So that's what I'm going to do with this. I've never been really familiar with Wringers, other than I knew they existed, but I'd never touched one or was up close enough to one to really study the mechanics of it. And that kind of stuff interests me, and perhaps it interests you too. Well, this little guy here flips up. Although the writing on the back is very much still intact, very good shape. All the mechanics on this thing, is for the age of it, are remarkable as far as the quality and the preservation of it. It's still pretty good shape. These little clamps here will clamp to your bucket, or in a little bit of the studying we found out that they're also equipped to where they can mount to a platform or a board that would house two buckets or two wash tubs. And I thought it was kind of neat. It must have been something unique to this particular company because it was the horseshoe brand, but it actually has, the clamps here have a little indentation in the casting of a horseshoe. And I thought that was kind of neat. But this thing is in really good shape. The old square head nuts on this thing. I'll just clean this up, and this will fit to most diameter tubs. And like I say, everything works on this thing. There's one of the rollers in here that are split, but I think for the age it's actually in really good shape. I'll show you the back side here. Steel ball bearings, like that's fairly new in the industry at that point. I don't know if they just had Babbitt bearings in the past, but these had the steel roller ball bearings that must have came out in maybe the early 1900s. I'm not sure about that. Maybe somebody can comment below and give us a little bit of history on different things. Looking at this, it almost looks like a Danish oil finish on here, but just the detail. Look at the grains on this. It looks like a maple or a birch. But these actually put pressure down on this spring right here, which also puts pressure down on this bar, this wooden bar, and that wooden bar puts pressure on this roller set. So what happens is, the looser you make this, the less intense the pressure is on the two rollers here. And so you can put like heavier things like maybe jeans. Well, they don't know if they had jeans that day, but they certainly had breeches. And so then you could loosen these guys up here a little looser, and to where the clothes, the thicker clothes, can fit through the rollers, and smaller things like socks and whatnot, you would cinch these guys down to where these rollers are tighter together, so it could wring them out better. Looking at the side of this thing, here's the revolutionary ball bearing. You can see a little bit of play in that roller bearing shaft, and these look like half-inch steel shafts that run through there. Still looks like it's in fairly good shape. If the guy really wanted to get automated, he could take this handle here off, and look at the just kind of looking at the condition of that handle. A lot of these things we looked at, the handles were cracked up and kind of falling apart, and I told Heidi, well, I could turn some more of those on the lathe, that's no big deal, but this one here is in really good shape. Again, I'm going to put some Danish oil on this, see if I can clean it up, preserve it, because this will be a working piece of equipment that we have here. I don't want to sand this down or refinish it or do anything to take away from just the old rustic look. Just keep the old finish on there. Just go over top of it with some Danish oil to help protect it. People may frown on other folks for what they consider ourselves, and I'm sometimes a little embarrassed to call ourselves homesteaders, because I kind of envision homesteaders as some of these folks that would come over on covered wagons, and so I guess we have to redefine what homesteading is. And homesteading, my wife had said on her video, is trying to be self-sufficient as possible. You know, even the homesteaders or the folks that developed this country early on, they still had to get wheat or flour and linens and different things to make things work on their homestead. And you know, we still do that today. You know, back then they had things like this. They had different metallurgy skills. Those were the new automated fancy things of that day, and you know, it's like the weapons and everything of that era. You know, they were pretty fancy. So anyway, I guess I'm just rambling on, but I guess I'm a little bit more old-fashioned in the respect of defining what homesteading is in the past. But you know, I think this day and age we have to redefine what homesteading is for some of you guys that are really hardcore about it. I've seen a lot of YouTube videos out there that make claims that, you know, if you live in the city or if you got electricity and city water and all that stuff, well, you're not a homesteader. Well, I don't know. Just because you have running water and electricity, well, a lot of people back then that were homesteaders, they still had plows and yokes for their horses. You know, they had the modern technology of the day. I mean, a lot of them were so poor that they couldn't afford the real fancy gadgets. And anyhow, that's just kind of my opinion, which probably doesn't mean a whole lot to anybody, but here it is. Heidi and I started out on this venture to try to be more financially responsible, and the more we did it, the more excited we got about it, because you know, we're like a lot of Americans and a lot of people in this world. We're under the strap of bondage with debt and just the quote-unquote the American dream was to have everything and buy now and pay later. We wanted to get out from underneath that bondage. So we set out to, again, like my wife had mentioned in her video, to get out of debt, get the house paid off, and wow, what a liberating experience that was when that actually happened. And I'd like to encourage everybody and anybody to pursue that lifestyle. It worked for us. It not necessarily works for everybody else. It's most definitely, you make some sacrifices along the way, but the reward in the end is so rewarding. You know, it's really exciting to be able to achieve that goal and to you know, maximize your position in life by not, you know, paying interest. Now this wood here is pretty, it's, you know, soaking up the Danish oil pretty good, so that's pretty exciting. That way I know that this thing is going to be a little bit better protected, and it's still sealing in some of the you know, the old finish that's on there. Thing that we're in the process of doing is I'll build Heidi a stand. I got 2 of these galvanized tubs here, and I'm going to mount this either old-fashioned wise. This used to go something like that, and I got some stuff here to attach this to the under part of the tub here, and I'll show you that maybe in another video. But I'm not 100% sure if I want to use these or if I want to use like a 4-flange with a handmade gasket in the bottom of it. I'm getting these rollers loosened up. The ball bearings in here were full of dirt and rust and whatnot. So I still got some more work to do on those to get those lubricated up. But man, this thing is working a lot easier now that I've washed a whole bunch of dust and dirt and lint and whatnot from old washings out of there, and the bearings are starting to look pretty doggone good anymore. So between the oiling, the washing out with WD-40, it's really starting to put the life back into this thing. So anyhow, hope you enjoyed.